Okay, well, let's get started by reciting our opening prayers. So, Michael, would you like to do the opening prayers tonight?
All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Tibetan. Dagladang warje pedra no parje pejeg. Tarpadang tam che kenpe bardu cho parje patam chikit sojepe. Manam kadang nyampe sem chen tam che dewa dang den. Dugnal dang drel nur du la. Na me pa yang dag pak dog pe chang chu rin po she to parja. Action Bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Tibetan. Je che du sang ma ge ki bar du lu nyagi samge walako. Ma she bar du lu nyagi samge walako. Du de ring ne sung te ni ma sang dat samgi bar du lu nyagi samge walako. Long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Tibetan. Drin chen sawadang gyu parche pe pel den la madam panam la kyab suchio. Yiram kil korgi la tsog nam la kyab suchio. Sangye chondan dem nam la kyab suchio. Nampe chonam la kyab suchio. Pagpegindun nam la kyab suchio. Pawo kandro chokyong sunme sogye shiki jendang denpa nam la kyab suchio. Bodhisattva vow. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta, and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Tibetan. Jangchu Ningpor Chiki Bar Sangye Nam Lab Kyab Suchi Chodang Jangchu Senpai Soglayang Deshin Kyab Suchi Jitkar Nyongi Desheki Chakchub Tugni Kepadang Kamchub Sempe La Pala De Dagrim Shin Nepata Dejin Drola Pendondu Jangchub Semni Kekijin Dejin Dun La Pala Rimpajin Du La Paji. Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Tibetan. Sangye Chodang Soki Chonam La Chakchu Bardu Dani Kyapsuchi Nagi Jin Sorgi Pe Sonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Druparsho. Four immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Tibetan. Manam kadang yampe semchentam che dewa dang dewe gyudang den parjur chit. Dugnyal gigu dang dral war gyur chit. Dugnyal me pe dewa dang mi dral war gyur chit. Ne ring chak dan yi dang dral we. Tang Yom La Ne Par Jur Chi.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about suffering. And as we talked in the past, when we were talking about the Buddha, during the time that he was teaching, that as he was traveling around, that he encountered 84,000 different emotions. And each one of these emotions were all together, brought combinations of different things that come up with us and so on. Some of, fear and confusions of all different types and so on. So what we're able to do is to bring those down to 5 basic poisons. And these poisons and all their myriad combinations are what make up the 84,000 emotions. So these emotions are, are one of the root um, obscurations that we have, and something that we spend a great deal of time working on to be able to recognize these emotions, to recognize the suffering that they create, and to recognize the causes of these sufferings, of these emotions. And then by doing that, then we can look at what the antidotes to those poisons would be. So in the sheet that I gave you, if you've got that, but if you don't, we will talk about that the 5 poisons that we repeat over and over and over again are hatred, is desire, is ignorance, is jealousy, and greed. So those are the 5 basic poisons. So ignorance and hatred and desire are the 3 main ones, the 3 main roots of our suffering, of confusion and so on. If we, with our ignorance, we're so ignorant that we don't even know what it is that we don't know. And we delude ourselves in thinking that we know everything, and that's one of the classic problems of human beings, is that we think that we know. We think that we are the best, and we think that our family is the best, and we think our nation is the best, and this is something that our built-in arrogance, our ego, wants us to be the best. But there are many, many things that we really don't recognize, many things that we don't realize in ordinary life, in our ordinary minds and so on, everyday existence. But there's other things that are going on that we're ignorant of when we talk about our spiritual body. So we talked, several times now about that we have 3 bodies, that we've got our physical body, we've got our intellectual body, and we've got our spiritual body. So many, many people don't accept the spiritual body, don't recognize it. They don't recognize that it is a influence on our physical body and on our intellect. When we have our 3 bodies working together in balance with each other, it's like a 3-legged stool. And as a human being, we become stable. And that's what we're looking to do, is to stabilize ourselves through these 3 bodies. And by recognizing the spiritual body, that's like the missing leg of that 3-legged stool. So if we're having emotional problems, we feel bad, we're not healthy, we get colds, we get sick, we have accidents because we're not paying attention, because we're caught up maybe in our intellectual mind, which when it's confused and everything, it becomes very neurotic, and we get caught up in that. The ego wants to attach to anything and to feel that it's the best. And many people who have neurotic problems use that neuroticism for them to be able to say, oh, I'm the best neurotic. Oh, I won't do those things. I won't go up on a ladder, or I won't, cross the street if a black cat just crossed me, or something like that. All these, peccadillos and all these confusions that we create for ourselves, make up our personality. And we take pride in that. Oh, I don't do that, or I only do it this way. I have to do these things in a set pattern. Otherwise, bad luck is going to come to me. So by looking and recognizing our spiritual body, we then see that all this is just all fabricated, that we're all creating this stuff ourselves, that our physical body can be strong and can be healthy if we're thinking properly, And if we're thinking properly, then we can meditate properly, we can contemplate properly. And so the three legs of the stool create this very stable human being. So that's what we say when we become a complete human being. So ignorance um, maybe doesn't recognize that. We're ignorant that we have this spiritual body and that it is a connection to our physical body and our intellectual body. So that's ignorance, the delusions that we create for ourselves. Many of us have been to school, been to college, and so on, and we maybe had a job or two to help put ourselves through school, and maybe our parents or family, helped us, or maybe we had to take loans out, to be able to pay for our school, and we have a great deal of time invested in it as well as the money aspect, and we have a great deal of pride invested in our going to school and creating a career for ourselves. And many of us, when we go to school, we're in our young 20s like that, and we're very idealistic, and we go out into the workforce, and maybe a year or two into our jobs, we realize, you know what, I'm really not happy doing this particular job. I don't feel really good about this, but I've got so much invested in this. I have to continue this, and I have to create a way in which my psyche can deal with having made a mistake, recognizing that we made a mistake. And then we're kind of like living a lie. We kind of like tell ourselves this story, and then we relate this story to other people when they ask about how we're doing with our careers and so on. But deep down, we're feeling very unhappy about our job. Another example might be a relationship, a marriage, or something like that. That we gone and got married in front of 200 people, and our parents spent all this money, and we got a nice house together, and now we're living together, but we're not happy with each other, and we're unhappy with ourselves because we're not happy in our relationship and so on. But we create this facade for ourselves. So the point here is that we're creating a delusion. So this delusion is like an ignorance, is not admitting the problem of what it is that we made a bad decision, and not having the courage to be able to step up and say, okay, we made this mistake, but we need to be able to correct the mistake in one way or another, and look at it and maybe get some help and try and figure out what the right path is. But many of us will carry on in our delusion and think that we can maintain our credibility with ourselves, our integrity, and so on. So all this are just aspects of the ignorance that we have within ourselves. There's many more aspects to this. So this is something to consider. This is something to think about, to meditate upon. So the next one would be desire, that we have attachments. Desire is another way of saying attachments, that we want these things, we want these possessions, we want this relationship, we want this job, we want this car, we want the notoriety that maybe comes with our position in our work, or with our family, or within a civic organization or something like that. So we have these desires that we go after, and we attach to them, and they become part of our personality. They become part of who we are. And if we lose any of these things, it can be devastating to us. So we have to be aware of what it is that is causing these desires, that, we need this for our ego gratification. And so it may come in we may get passionate about things. We may have lust for things, we may have just, simple, profound attachment for things. But this desire is something that is like a ring through our nose and is leading us around into these directions that we might not really be comfortable in following. But because of our delusion, the story that we've created for ourselves, that we follow in this desire to maintain this persona that we that deep down we might recognize or think that there, or we've suppressed that there is this persona that we need to follow and so on. So this desire, this attachment, is another of the five poisons. The third of the five poisons is hatred or aggression and the anger that we develop when things don't go our way, when our ego has been challenged in some way or another. And this hatred develops out of just being able to protect our ego, to be able to protect our delusions, to be able to protect our attachments and so on. So maybe it's something that's like in a family where someone was slighted in a family generations ago, and an uncle did something to his brother, and who is my grandfather or something like that, and but now in the family there's a rift in the family where this part of the family doesn't talk to that part of the family because of something that happened generations ago. But we carry that on because of our delusions, because we can have a family delusion, a family uh, ideal persona, an ego of what the family is, and we create the sense of me or I or my and other. Here's the other side of the family. So this is an example of anger that we develop. Another example of anger would be through our fears, that we fear that we are not that we're not good enough, that we our state of well-being, that we are going to lose our substance, we're going to lose our possessions, we're going to lose our stature in some way, and we live in fear of that. So whenever something is threatening to that, we get angry and we have aggression. You know, we overcompensate by not being defensive, and our defense is a strong offense. So we may develop this anger to protect ourselves in that way. Another fear might be that we are going to that we're going to lose our sense of well-being. Well, I just said that, but our sense of excuse me, I just got the so it was the fear of the loss, and then it was the um, my notes. Thank goodness. Retribution, that others are going to take retribution against us uh, because of our inadequacy, of our shortcomings, or our errors. So we are afraid of that. So we develop, you know, this anger. We develop this aggression to be able again to protect ourselves and what our families are, and so on like that. So there's many permutations of the way in which these three things work: this anger, this hatred, and the aggression, together with the ignorance and together with the attachment. There may be another thing that we get angry about, will be when we're running out of time. We feel that we're losing time, and we might get angry over that. You know, I know myself when I'm in the car and I'm in a hurry to go someplace, and then something happens and the traffic light, it seems like I get every single traffic light, and it just, you know, would aggravate me. And I would get mad about something like that. But why am I getting mad? Just because I feel like my time is more important than the safety of everybody else, and I should have all the green lights. This is, of course, a silliness, but meanwhile, it's something that we get angry about. Um, Another thing I get angry about is the computer. When I'm trying to work on something, and things aren't going exactly the way I want. My computer's running slow for some unforeseen reason, and I often say I don't keep a baseball bat on my desk anywhere near it because I feel like I want to take that baseball bat and annihilate the computer. And of course, that's not a good solution. But it's little things like this that become big things. And any one of those little things, if I had that baseball bat next to my computer and I destroyed my computer, I'd be crying in my eyes, in my hands, in no time at all, because, now I just destroyed my computer. I got to go out and buy another one. And I got to go through all this stuff of configuration and everything. What a terrible mistake. But that's the problem with anger, that one short moment like that of anger can destroy so much good virtue that you've created for yourself. So all the things that it took for me to be able to get this nice car, what it took for me to be able to get this nice computer and do all this thing, in one moment of anger, I can destroy all those things. You begin to take chances. If you're in the car, you're getting mad, you're late, and you begin to take chances, and before you know it, there's an accident. So there's many permutations, like I said, about these things. So we need to be aware of these things. And there's many things in our books, there's many things in our prayers, many things in our everyday life that become the fuel or the food for these thoughts to understand, to be able to look at. And we need to be able to carve out the time for ourselves to be able to analyze these things, to be able to look at these things and see what builds these things up. So then there's two other poisons that are, one is jealousy or envy. And sometimes, we have a poor sense of self-being, self-worth or something. And I'm jealous about somebody else's accomplishments. I'm jealous. Oh, I would like to do that. And this jealousy just festers in my mind, in the back of my head, and just makes me feeling bad about myself, that I'm not worthy of being able to have something like that. So maybe it's a position at work, or maybe it's a new car, or maybe it's a spouse, a relationship that I want to have, and the jealousy just kind of blinds you to your attachment, and it makes you angry, and all these things working together and so on. So this envy, this jealousy, can be quite insidious because you don't want to admit that you're jealous. And but then when a certain circumstance may come up where, say, for instance, your girlfriend is talking to some other guy, and now you're getting angry because she's talking to some other guy, but meanwhile, maybe she's, it's very innocent and has nothing to do, with your relationship with your girlfriend. But maybe you are so confused and so fearful that you manufacture this idea in your mind. So it's a false idea that creates this jealousy, or it's a false sense of your poor well-being. So another of the five poisons is greed or pride. So many of us can be quite successful, and we can have position at work, and the position at work lavishes praise on us, or lavishes money on us, and or a new office or something like that. And we become very, very prideful about that. We become very greedy about that. We want to hold on to that. We want to be, you know, the best of the person in the office or something. And we don't want to give that up. We don't want to share that. And as a matter of fact, we want more of it. If we're getting money, we want more money. If we're getting an office, we want a bigger office, or we want better furniture in the office. If if it's something with with a car, we want a new car. We want a better car. Our neighbor has a car. I want a better car than he has, and so on. And once I get it, now I don't want anybody to drive it. I don't want anybody to get near my car, and I become very, very protective of it. And now I got this car. Maybe I want another car, you know. And so we have this greed. We develop this greed. We develop this pridefulness of ourselves. So it's these five poisons that become the basis of all the emotions that we create for ourselves, that we manufacture for ourselves, that become our personality, that become our persona. And for us to be able to deal with these, we usually just kind of plow through them through ignorance. You know, we've developed these walls around ourselves, around our personality, and this is the way I am, and 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 if I'm very good at that, you know, I can be very strong, and everybody has to play along with the way I want to do things, and that's very good. If I'm not so good at it, and I'm weak at that, then I can become, you know, the one who needs all this sympathy, the one who needs all this attention, the one who needs all this reassurance and so on. And people can be very comfortable in that, you know, in that sense. And they're always trying to do things, and they're always trying to ask people, well, am I doing okay? Is this okay? And you know, I can't do this. I'm not very good at this. And they're always reminding people, and they're reminding themselves how inadequate they might think that they are, and so on. So we can have these different sides that we can take with our ego, with our confusion, to give ourselves a unique identity and a unique ego attachments. So we have to be aware of all these things. So when we sit down, when we have moments of quiet, you know, sometimes these thoughts will begin to come up. And maybe this is a reason why a lot of people don't like to be by themselves. They don't like to have quiet time. They always find ways to make themselves very, very busy so that they don't have to, you know, listen to those wheels turning around in their head and start thinking about all these different things. Um, but in our way of, of, of approaching life, and our way of being able to understand our spirituality, of our being a complete human being, it's very important for us to understand these things. And we begin to recognize what it is that when we get angry, that what it is when we get um, um, attached, what it is that we have aversions, what it is that when we get prideful, what it is when we get jealousy, what it is when we get ignorant of things, when we meet some situation and you realize, wow, there's this whole other part of the world that I have just not been exposed to. I haven't allowed myself to be exposed to. And now I have to bring this in and be able to learn things and so on. I remember when I was around 40 years old, and I was along in my career and I was doing pretty good and everything. And I thought to myself, gee, I don't have to learn anything anymore. That's all behind me. I've really got it made. I got a nice family, I got a nice house, I got nice possessions, I got a nice job, all these things. There's nothing more I need to learn. I've done it. Now all I got to do is just work for the next few years and I can retire and play golf the rest of my life, something like that. But then slowly, I started thinking about things and reading things and realizing that there was this whole other part of my life that I have been kind of suppressing, and I need to get into these new things. And then I found myself re-engaging into learning more things. There were two aspects to that. There was in my job, because in my job was a technical job. It was electronics, and things are changing very fast. So all the things that I was being successful at when I was 40 years old were now becoming obsolete when I was 41 years old and 42 years old. So I had to go back and retrain and do that. And I'm in classes with kids that are, half my age or 10 years younger than me and so on. And I'm the old man, trying to keep up with the new technologies and so on. But then there was also the spiritual aspect, the spirituality of things. And here I thought, well, I've been a meditator for a long time and I understand things, but then, things are coming up and I'm reading a few new things. And now I find out, well, there's this whole other arena that I can study about spirituality that is really quite exciting and good. And I need to be able to make time for that and to be able to do that and humble myself to be able to do that and so on, and to take teachers. That became a very difficult thing, in the beginning, to be able to say, well, I'm done with teachers. I don't need a teacher, but to be able to go and recognize that I have to be humble and I need to invite a teacher into my life and to be able to follow the teacher and so on like that. So these are the changes that we go through. And being a healthy person, one accepts that and sees that one is always a child in someone's eyes, but you can also be an adult in someone else's eyes. And so we continue with this throughout our lives and so on. So to be able to open ourselves up to this humility is very, very important. So does anybody have any thoughts about any of this? Any questions about what I'm talking about so far? Any anecdotes?
I have a question.
Okay.
Where in this spectrum of poisons would would aversion fall? I know you mentioned aversion once, but the word itself isn't in the list.
Aversion means you don't want it. You're pushing it away.
Right.
So it's a hatred.
Oh, it's a hatred.
It's a hatred.
Okay.
So aversion. So we talk about in our prayers. We talk about in the four immeasurable prayer. The last line says, "May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion."
Yeah.
It's part of our dualistic nature. Yes. So seeing all these different causes is important. Why do we get angry? Why do we push things away? Why do we have jealousy? All these things, to be able to analyze these things and be able to see these things. Sometimes we can't recognize what it is that in this particular life, that why I get angry like I do. Is it something that happened when I was 5 years old? Is it something that I was born with? Is it something that I've developed over years? Is it something I learned from my family or from my friends? Why do I get angry? Or why do I get selfish? Why do I get greedy? Is that something that we're born with, or is it something that we develop? So any of those reasons are valid reasons for us to be able to analyze and be able to look at. But what we need to do is to be able to concentrate more on recognizing that the very fact that we get angry or that we have the aversion or that we have the attachment or we have the jealousy, to be able to recognize that and then to be able to say, well, how do I overcome that? How do I deal with that? And then as we begin to put those two pieces of the puzzle together, as we go through our life, as we go through day-to-day things and everything, we begin to see the things that happen very, very subtly to us that causes that emotion to come up. And you say, oh, that's why I get angry here, because of the time element, or that somebody's attacking me in some way that I feel worthless or something like that. That's what's making me upset. So now I have, now I can link the causes together with the result, and now I have a way of dealing with the how to overcome that. So they kind of answer themselves in that way. So we need to be able to look at, for each of these poisons, that there is an antidote. So for hatred, for instance, the antidote is mindfulness, is being aware of what is happening, that you're getting angry. And very often, when you get angry, I think, is, it's building up, and there might be 3 or 4 layers before all of a sudden it gets to a breaking point, and then you lash out, and then something, terrible happens. You start yelling and screaming, or you hurt yourself, or you hurt somebody else, or you damage something like that, if you're really out of control. So it's important to develop mindfulness of where your anxiety is, where it is that you are going, and what you need to do to be able to overcome that anger is loving kindness, to have grace for ourselves, to be able to recognize, yes, these things are happening, but I need to slow down. I need to take a minute. I need to recognize that I'm getting anxious, and I need to take a break, and I need to think about this, and we develop this loving kindness, the loving kindness for ourselves, that we have to give ourselves the ability to say, okay, I'm not doing this perfectly. I'm doing this a poor job of this, but I have to give myself the loving kindness to be able to say, okay, I can work my way through this slowly, slowly, slowly. Maybe I need to re-educate myself. Maybe I just need to take a break. Maybe I need to go away from this and come back to it later, after I've settled down, and things will work out, and I'll be able to find my solution that I'm looking for. So this loving kindness, this grace that we have for ourselves, this grace, this it's like this forgiveness, to be able to say, okay, I'm not perfect. And I have the grace to be able to say, I need to be able to help myself to be able to overcome this anger, this aggression, and so on. So the mindfulness is the awareness of what's going on, of being able to see what's going on. Anger only exists in your mind, in your intellect. It doesn't. It's not a possession that you hold or something like that. Some of the other things we hold on to are actual physical things, but this is simply a mind generated emotion, a mindset generated thing. So we need to be aware of that. So we have to develop the mindfulness to recognize that. With our desire or our attachment, some object may be involved with that. Maybe it's our girlfriend, or maybe it's our car, maybe it's our house, maybe it's our job, whatever. And there's something there that is causing us to have this deep desire for this, and this is very strong, but it's also it is more subtle. And to be able to recognize that requires a higher degree of withdrawing from the situation, of being able to analyze, to be able to go into a point of a deeper time out, like a meditation, to be able to understand what these attachments are, what these desires are. So we have to develop a practice of meditation for ourselves, to be able to help us through this, to be able to see this, and and be able to learn the signs of what these attachments are, and be able um, to we begin to cut them off. We begin to say, you know what, I don't need these things like I think I need these things. So that takes a little bit of time to develop. It takes a little bit of understanding, and it takes a degree of replacement. That if I'm spending time being attached to these things, if I give up these things, now I got this time. What am I going to do with this time? And sometimes that becomes the issue. So we need to be able to have replacing things with more wholesome things, more wholesome behavior. So being able to withdraw to a point of self-circumspection becomes very important. So we can call this meditation. So this becomes an antidote for these deep-seated attachments, deep-seated desires. Then with our jealousy, we have these built up ideas that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy of being able to have these things and so on. And what we need to recognize is this poor self-being. And what we need to develop is a dauntlessness. And the dauntlessness means like an unimpededness. It means that we can accomplish anything that we want to accomplish if we put ourselves to it, if we have a system by which we can learn, that we can practice, that we can develop a self-confidence in being able to work at something that we are jealous, that we are envious of, that we want to have. Many times what will happen in the process of doing that, once we recognize that if we start working for something, we might find that what it was that we wanted in the first place was just an idea that we really we won't be happy with. We think we want this because it satisfies a certain part of our ego. But once we start getting it, we realize that it's something that we really don't want. An example of that might be, I really want that new car. So I start working for the new car, and finally I get a down payment together, and I go to the dealer, and I'm talking to him about the car, and he says, well, because you want this car, you got to have special insurance for this. And you think to yourself, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that. And then maybe you get the car, you get the insurance, but now you find yourself parking the car all the way far away when you go onto the parking lot where you work or where you shop and everything, and you didn't anticipate that. And all these things begin to happen, and you begin to say, you know what, maybe I didn't want that car to begin with. Maybe it was a bad idea. And so that which I was jealous about, that which I was envious about, now I realize I really don't want that. I really don't need that. So if you're in that mode of trying to accomplish something, and you come to that awareness, to be able to say, oh, you know what, I'm making a mistake. I need to stop. I need to back up, and I need to go a more comfortable path, a more understanding path, and so on, where I don't have this jealousy, I don't have this envy anymore, and to be a more satisfied, happy person, and so on. So it's through this sense of dauntlessness, it's through this sense of unimpededness that we can accomplish whatever it is that we want. But at the same time, we may find that there are things that we really don't need, that we really don't want these things, and so on. So, and then we simplify our lives in the process of doing that. So the next thing would be greed or pride. And in greed or pride, we got a bank full of money. We have a big position at work. We have a wonderful family, and we want to hold on to this, and we want more of this. I've got a bank full of money. I want a second bank full of money. So I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to get more and more of that money and put it in the second bank. And I'm not going to share it with anybody because I may need that money one day. And then you may realize, oh, I got all this money. I can never spend this money in the rest of my life. But yet I'm proud of the fact that I got this money. If I do something to give this money away, I'm going to lose my pridefulness. I'm going to lose my purpose. So I fabricate, I live in the delusion that I got to have more money, that I got to have this pride, I got to have this greediness, and so on. Another example might be in work, where you've got a very high position in work and so on, but you did that through developing a system of operation and so on, and you won't share that with anybody. You won't teach anybody to do your job because you're prideful that if they learn your job, they're going to take your position away and you're going to be tossed out, rather than thinking, well, if I teach this person my job, I can go on and do something else, and I can start a new part of the company. I can do something else that is going to help everybody else and so on. And we can grow the company that way instead of being prideful and selfish and holding on to things on our own. So by practicing generosity, by making ourselves share some of that money, by making ourselves teach other beings and so on what it is that we have accomplished in our lives with our jobs or in our family, the success that we have in our families and so on, that it you're helping them, but it's also helping you to overcome the emotions that come along with the greedfulness and the pridefulness. So you become a happier, you become a more simple person who is more satisfied within yourself and so on. So the next poison is the great poison of ignorance. And this is the delusion. This is the lies that we tell ourselves. So this delusion, this ignorance, is what keeps us from recognizing all the other 5 poisons or the other 4 poisons and the other 4 antidotes, that we don't open ourselves up to that. We don't recognize that. And the thing that allows us to be able to bring that in, to be able to overcome that ignorance, is by education. And that education has a teaching component in it, that you're teaching yourself, through your education, you're teaching yourself something about all these different things and so on. And sometimes through teaching other people that which you know, that which you're prideful about and so on, comes back to you in a way of the questions that they ask and so on. And you can be refining, you can be purifying, excuse me, what your knowledge base is, just through education, through teaching. So this education is the antidote to the delusions, is the education, is the antidote to the ignorance. So we have to, again, open ourselves up to new things that are going to change our life, to allow our life to grow and so on. So these 5 poisons, now these 5 antidotes, there's many causes that cause all these things. And the way to recognize these things is to be able to have periods of time when you're willing to sit down quietly and you're willing to examine what is going on in your life, what is going on in your mind, what it is when you get unhappy, what it is when you get angry and so on. So this is why we talk about developing a daily practice where we carve out some time for ourselves to allow these things to come up and to be able to analyze these things and use these tools of remembering what these things are, and then being able to, once now we can identify the causes, then we can use the antidotes, and then we begin to be more comfortable. And the poisons get satisfied, they get neutralized. What we develop out of this is what we call the 5 wisdoms. So the 5 wisdoms are something that we spend a lifetime developing. It's not something that happens like that. We can learn about it, Like we're learning about the poisons, we're learning about the antidotes, and we can learn about the wisdoms. But we find that there, every time that we think that we have conquered something, every time we think that we have learned something, and I'm not going to have that emotion anymore. I'm not going to suffer from that poison anymore. We find that there's some other little aspect of it that we didn't count on, that we didn't recognize, that that comes up now, and now we have to go back and we have to go back, reanalyze things and so on. And this develops into more deeper wisdom. Our wisdom becomes deeper, becomes broader, becomes more profound. So these wisdoms are what we say are the wisdoms of the Buddha. The Buddha is within us. And we've talked about that this is like a diamond, this true nature that we have within ourselves, this indestructible nature that we've had all, that we were born with and that we continue with all our lives and so on. And this indestructible diamond is our bodhicitta. We talk about bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, this balance and this understanding, this wisdom and this compassion. All this is all part of this true nature. And this is what we're trying to get to. So it's the poisons, it's the antidotes that are keeping us, that are blocking this up. The antidotes are helping us to clean it away, to purify it. And then we see, light coming through this indestructible diamond that we have within ourselves and so on. So this is the wisdom that is within ourselves. And this wisdom begins to come up. The wisdom begins to come out and say, oh, that's how I can overcome this. This is how I am making a difference in my life and so on. So the wisdom, to recognize the wisdom, helps us with everything else. And so it's all these pieces that we put together. So it's like we say that this system, the system of Dharma, the system of Buddhism, is like a 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that you have to put together without a picture. So you get this puzzle and you put it down on your table and you get all the pieces spread out and so on. And the first thing that you do is you start looking for the corner pieces and you start looking for the square edge pieces so that you can create the frame. So this is what we're doing. So these poisons and these antidotes and these wisdoms become the frame. So we have to establish that. And then as we continue to develop our practice of meditation, of analyzation, of contemplation, and so on, we're looking at all the internal pieces and the interior pieces, and we start seeing where pieces start fitting together. And this is what takes time. And this is what we do. This is what it is to be on the path, to be able to examine this. And what we're doing is we're sharpening our skills. We're becoming better investigators. We're becoming more honest with ourselves. We're becoming more humble with ourselves. We're getting a self of accomplishment. All these things begin to develop, and we're stabilizing now these 5 wisdoms. So now the 5 wisdoms. So in hatred, in understanding hatred and seeing that it's the mindfulness, the loving kindness, it's the wisdom that we need to be able to apply to undo, to neutralize the hatred, we develop a mirror-like wisdom. Now, what does mirror-like wisdom mean? Mirror-like wisdom means that everything is like an appearance, like a reflection. It's a reflection of our intellect. It's a reflection of our true nature, of our big mind. It's a reflection of our body, of our form, that We're all part of something. And if we look at everything as being a reflection, if we look at everything as something that we have created for ourselves, that it really doesn't exist on its own. It's simply a creation that we have manifested for ourselves. I need to have this persona. I need to have this job. I need to have this respect. I need to have this family. I need to have all these things, which are all these things that create our our sense of being, that is just something that we have manufactured for ourselves. And it is an appearance. It's like a reflection in a mirror. If you're looking at a mirror and you go to grab that reflection in the mirror, you you can't get it because it's just an image. It's just a reflection of something else in that mirror. And you don't recognize the mirror itself. You're looking for that image. So if we look at our lives, if we look at everything around us as an image that we have created for ourselves, then if I go to grab it in the mirror, I can't grab it. If I look at things all around us, that it is unnecessary to grab, that it is just a figment of my imagination. So this is a pretty deep idea to be able to think about that, because everything seems so substantial to us and so on. But when we think about that in our lives, everything is a mutation. Everything is changing. Everything is mutable. Our life is mutable. Our body is mutable. All this is always changing. And that we are compounds of many different things and so on. So what seems to be a permanent object, we find is made up of many, many things, that they themselves are made up of other things, and that is all impermanent, that over time, it all changes, it all goes away. It's all like a reflection in a mirror. So we develop this mirror-like wisdom, that we see everything just as appearances. It's what we make it. It's what our value system is. And if our value system is way inflated, then we're holding on so much. We have these fabricated aversions. We have these jealousies. We have all these things, these neurotic behaviors and so on, that are out of control. And we think that's what life is, instead of life being something very simple, very serene, very beautiful, being able to enjoy every minute, 1 minute at a time, being able to enjoy every day, 1 day at a time, and so on like that. So this mirror-like wisdom is the key to being able to, or is the result, I should say, is what comes from being able to overcome anger through wisdom, through loving kindness, through grace, through mindfulness. So all these things require contemplation. We're talking about the component parts now, and then we have to start thinking about these things. So part of our job in Buddhism 101 is to identify these things. You know, your job, your homework is to be able to sit down and think about these things, take it apart and put it back together again as it relates to your life. We're talking about in generalities right now, but we have to be self-circumspect. So now the next poison is desire that we would talk about. Y'all want to take a minute? Do you need a minute to stand up and stretch, or get a drink of water or something like that? Y'all doing okay? You okay? Okay. Any questions or anything? Okay. All right. All right, then I'll continue. So now the next poison was desire, and the meditation is what overcomes that. And we develop by contemplating the desire, the attachments, by contemplating the meditation, what the meditation is, we develop the wisdom of discriminating awareness. The wisdom of discriminating awareness. We choose what to examine, what to be aware of, what to think about, what to contemplate. Sometimes we need the immediacy of dealing with a physical problem right now, and everything else needs to be marginalized, okay? But then sometimes all that physicality stuff can be marginalized. And now we need to think about something that is more intellectual. And we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to make our time to be able to do that. We have to educate ourselves, as we were saying, and so on. But then sometimes even that can be put aside. And now we need to develop more understanding, more wisdom awareness of our spirituality. What does that mean? And then that's when we start looking at different systems. We look at different religions, we look at different philosophies, we begin to read things, we begin to talk to people, we begin to go to teachings, we begin to do these things, we begin to do practices and so on. So in order to overcome our desire, our attachments to that which we think is all permanent and real, those appearances, when we begin to attach to all that, we need to be able to have the wisdom of discriminating awareness to say, you know what, I need to think about what all this means. I need to think about this philosophy. I need to understand what this is. So that has many tiers to it, has many different levels and so on. So it's, but the more that we do the meditation, the more that we do the examination, the more that we are trying to overcome our desires, the more that we're trying to liberate ourselves from all these things, the more that we are developing the wisdom of discriminating awareness. And we say, okay, right now I don't need to do anything. I'm very relaxed. You know, I worked all day. I did everything I needed to do. And I'm going to just relax and just, you know, turn on the television and watch something that might be wholesome, something that's not going to upset me or anything. Or maybe I'm going to read a book, or maybe I'm just going to sit here and rest for a half an hour and I'm not going to think of anything like that. Or maybe it's that you're going to do it first thing in the morning, something like that. And then when the thoughts come up, when you make that time for yourself, thoughts will come up. It's not that you can say you're going to do that now all of a sudden there's no thoughts. Thoughts come up, and what are the thoughts about? You know, are they the thoughts that become the things that, if you let them go uncontrolled, will make you angry, or the thoughts of pridefulness, or the thoughts of desire, or something like that? And you say, okay, maybe I need to think about this. Or maybe I say, you know what, I'm glad I thought of this, but right now is not the best time for me to think about it. I'd rather think about it in the morning. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write it down. I'm going to make a note about it. And then tomorrow I'll look at it with fresh eyes, a fresh mind, and then I'll be able to examine it more. So the wisdom of discriminating awareness, it's being able to know how to compartmentalize the physical, the intellectual, and the spiritual. They're all the same. They all come together within ourselves. So they can't be denied, but we need to find a formula, a way in which that we can use them at certain times. If we try and do everything all at the same time, it just becomes a jumbled, confused mess. And our anxiety goes up, our anger potential goes up, our attachments come up. All these things become, you know, we start thinking about other people. Oh, they make it look so easy. I want to be like them, you know, and now I got this and I don't want to share it. I'm prideful. I'm the best meditator there is on the block now. And Everybody should talk to me and all this, but with the wisdom of discriminating awareness, we're starting to put things into a system. So the next thing is jealousy. So in jealousy, we find that our jealousy is built up of ideas that we want to satisfy our ego, our persona. We have envy, and it stays in the back of the mind. It's very, very subtle in the way it works, but it can control us in a very fundamental way. This jealousy and so on becomes a motivation all our life. I always wanted to be like so and so, and everything that I do in my life is like this kid that I met when I was 16 years old, who I just adored. I thought this kid was so great, and I always think that I'm being like this kid when we were 16 years old or something like that. You never really admit it to yourself that way, but it's always that mental picture that you have in the back of your head. Oh, he drove a great car. Oh, he always had the best girlfriend. Oh, he always had to seem to have money and so on like that. So it could be something like that. So the wisdom that we accomplish by looking at that we can do things, that we need to be dauntless, that we need to use our unimpededness, is the all-accomplishing wisdom. That we can accomplish whatever it is that we need to do. Now, need is one thing, want is another thing. So being able to differentiate between those two, and being able to admit to ourselves the difference of that, and being able to see that the wants may take us down paths that we don't want to go down. I made the example of going down a road and realizing we're halfway to our goal, but then we realize we're making a mistake. So we back up and say, I don't need to do that. I don't need to have that car. I don't need to have that job. I don't need to have those responsibilities. I'd be much happier being a much more simple person and so on. So this all-accomplishing wisdom shows us that what we may not accomplish, excuse me, what we may not accomplish in physicality, what we may not be able to accomplish in intellectualism, I may be able to accomplish spiritually. Spiritually has no limits to it at all. And maybe that's what I'm really looking for. And again, it's being able to see that our spiritual body is a vital part of our human nature, of our complete human experience. Part of our human experience, to be able to bring that together, to bring our spirituality together with our physicality, with our intellectuality. So that's an important aspect. So this is the all-accomplishing wisdom. Sometimes if we've developed, good contemplation skills, meditation skills, that you can sit and you can go through the whole process of what it is that you think you need to do, and you can have the same experience of actually doing it just through your mindfulness, just through your one-pointed mindfulness of going through this, and without having to do all those things. You say, and then you can realize, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. So you can undo it. You can abandon it, because it was unwholesome. It wasn't what you needed to do. On the other hand, something that seems insurmountable can be done through your meditation. You can think it through, and then you can go and then you can actualize it in everyday life, and it comes to all fruition because you thought it all completely through and so on like that. So there's many aspects to be able to experience with that, with the all-accomplishing wisdom. So then the next one is greed and pride. So greed and pride, and we said that it's generosity that overcomes our desire, our wanting to be greedy, our need to be greedy, because we're afraid to share that which we have. Our ego is so attached to those possessions or to that position in life or something like that. So what we develop as we excuse me again. So what we develop with out of this generosity to deal with our greediness is our wisdom of equanimity, the wisdom of sameness, the wisdom of balance, that we see that everything is here and we can enjoy everything. But sometimes, any given object has a proportion of our connection to it. Sometimes we're equally connected to it. Sometimes it's 70-30, of 30-70. And whether it's another human being or it's possessions, physical possessions or something like that. And we see that through our through our generosity of spending time, being able to understand this, we see that it's all the same. We can look at our body, we can look at our hand and say, okay, this is permanent. This is something that is permanent. It will be with me all my life, and it's very important, and I don't want to lose it. And but the more I look into it, the deeper I go, the more I see that it's made up of many different things. It's made up of all these different component parts and so on. But we also find out that everybody has the same thing. Everybody's made up of the same thing. So I'm looking at my hand, it's made up of tissues and bones and muscles and all that kind of stuff. Everybody has that. So we're saying there's a sameness there, there's an equanimity now. But then also my emotions, all this intelligence, all this stuff that I'm developing and so on, other people have that too. They have their potential to be able to do that too. And then we can look at the animal world and we can see that animals, have some degree of that. They may not have the intelligence, but they have the physicality of things, and they do have some degree of intelligence about them. And insects and then the inanimate objects, they have a physicality that we share that is the same. Remember, we're made up of carbon, and carbon makes up everything. So we begin to see this equanimity. We begin to recognize this sameness in all things that are in this phenomenal world in which we live and so on. So through being generous and not trying to monopolize and not trying to gather so much more than what we need, because we get more than what we need and it begins to deteriorate on its own. It begins to break apart. It can get so heavy on itself that it implodes. So by recognizing these dynamics, we can maintain this wisdom of equanimity, of balance, of generosity enacted to be able to maintain this happiness where we overcome this greediness, when we are selfless, and that's one of the things that we're trying to understand. If our ego is our self, and if we can let go of our ego, we're letting go of the self, we're becoming selfless, and then we just all become part of what all this phenomenal nature is in all of its physicality, in all of its intellectualism and in all of its spirituality. So this requires some contemplation. I mean, just saying that doesn't really mean anything until you really bring it in and you be able to experience that sameness. You begin to experience that equanimity. So we develop that wisdom of equanimity. So the next thing is the delusion, the ignorance. So this is the big one, you know. And what we develop, the wisdom that comes out of being able to educate ourselves about what all this is, all these other poisons and so on, and all the wisdoms and everything, is the all-pervading wisdom. To be able to see into the corners of the recesses, into the shadows that were impenetrable to our ordinary eyes, our ordinary mind, and so on. We begin to recognize this all-pervading wisdom, something that is beyond us at one level, but is something that we are totally a part of at a higher level, at a higher awareness level. So an analogy for this would be like the nighttime and the daytime. In the nighttime, you can turn off the lights, you can have your windows open, and you can go deep into your house, and everything is just like pitch black. But then during the daytime, when the sun is up and the windows are open, and you can then go into your rooms and you can go into the deeper parts of your house, and although the sun is out there, the light of the sun still comes down and penetrates deep into your house and illuminates what was complete darkness during the nighttime. That's how it penetrates. So it's like all pervading. That light is like all pervading. You can't see the sun from 2 or 3 rooms in the interior of your house. You can't see the sun, but yet it's light. It's making its way in there. So this is like that all pervading wisdom. It's like that sunshine. It's like that light that comes from the sun that does that, or the heat that comes from the sun like that. So this all-pervading wisdom, you see, is revealed to us, is opened up to us when we are able to rest the delusions that we have. All things are possible. And we have to let go of all those fabrications, all those lies, all those mental preconceptions that we've created for ourselves, all the habitual tendencies that we are leading us around like the ring through our nose and so on. But if we open ourselves up, then we see this all-pervading possibilities. Everything is there for us, and it goes beyond being a human being. It goes into the pure spiritual. When we drop our physical body, when we drop our intellect, because the brain and the intellect are the body. So when that goes away and we become pure spirit, does the pure spirit go away because we dropped our body? Does the spirit still maintain? Is there a continuum of spirit? Is there an all-pervading wisdom that we are learning to recognize? So this is a step in that direction and being able to understand that. So these are the 5 wisdoms. So it's on this sheet here. And these are the 5 wisdoms. And they are, and in the great wisdom of the Buddha, of Shakyamuni Buddha, he was able to teach this in a way that ordinary human beings could begin to understand this. And what he was able to do was to be able to give a anthropomorphic characterization of each one of these wisdoms. Because if it's too abstract, the human mind, it's hard to hold on to these things. So you see here that in the third column, it says the Buddha that is associated with these. So these Buddhas are meditational Buddhas. They're not historical Buddhas. They're not human beings. They're meditational deities that allow us to give the value, to recognize the value of their embodiment of bodhicitta as the core, but that their activities, that their wisdom is specialized, and that these Buddhas are all within ourselves. We are these Buddhas. We share all of this together. And it's a matter of being able to unblock that diamond nature, that true nature that we have within ourselves. And in order to be able to take a step in understanding that, the Shakyamuni Buddha was so wise, his genius was to be able to create this family of 5 Buddhas, to be able to articulate this family of 5 Buddhas. So Ascobia is the mirror-like wisdom. Amitabha is the wisdom of discriminating awareness. Amagogasiddhi is the all-accomplishing wisdom. Ratnasambhava is the wisdom of equanimity. And Varanchana is the all-pervading wisdom. So this may sound, really strange to you. Maybe it's the first time you're hearing this, but these are symbols. These are characterizations to help us to understand our potential that is beyond our mere physical and intellectual, to understand our spiritual. And they all have female consorts. So, and we say that the female consort is Tara, the name of the mother of all the Buddhas. The mother of all the Buddhas is the wisdom that we all come from. The womb of Tara is that cradle of wisdom that we all come from, that all these Buddhas come from. She represents the actual wisdom. He represents is the actualization of the wisdom. The female and the male together. So these are all working together. So it's showing, it's part of our awareness to recognize that we have all this within ourselves, and that any problem, any situation, we can bring in, and we can solve this by looking at the purity of these meditational deities, because these deities are so pure that they haven't materialized, and in that way they can remain pure. There's no contamination with them. There's pure loving kindness, there's pure compassion, there's pure joy, and there's pure equanimity, bodhicitta. There's no possibility of it being contaminated. Being a human being is what contaminates these things, is what blocks these things up. Through our mental preconceptions, through our habitual tendencies, through our emotions. And this is what we need to be able to recognize and purify them. So that's what all this is about. So here we've established a vocabulary, we've established a system on which we will now begin to talk more and more and more about as the weeks go by. So I know in the beginning this was very dry, and maybe it was very easy to take for granted, but you can see now how is so interconnected with wisdom and with skillful means, with actualization of how we do this, how we recognize that we are Buddha and that we need to actualize Buddha in our everyday life and everything that we do with our body, speech, and mind. When we go Om, Ah, Hum, we're talking about the body of the Buddha. We're talking about the speech of the Buddha. We're talking about the mind of the Buddha. And may my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. And we're all Buddha. Buddha is just a word that means this our true nature. It means the awakened one. So it doesn't matter what our religion is. It doesn't matter what our nationality is. It doesn't matter what our wealth is. It doesn't matter what our sex is. We're pervaded by all this spirituality. And that's what we're coming to recognize. Okay. Any other questions, comments now? What do you think? Gary, what do you think? You got to turn your microphone.
Yes, I just did.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the centerpiece of it is awareness of your behavior, awareness of the world around you, and how the precepts that we are learning in Buddhism apply to our behavior. It's not just about reading books and learning the elements of Buddhism. It's I think that one of the words you used was actualization, living it, living what you've learned, and that is the key to it, and that's the hard part. A lot of people are scholars. I am not, and they can learn these things, and they can memorize them, and they can write them down, and they can pass a test. This is what you have to do to live your life well, to follow the path. But what I'm hearing you say is that we're being challenged almost every moment of every day to live the path, because there are things coming at us. And in terms of people, in terms of people's behavior, in terms of broader experiences, life itself, that we have to bear in mind what we've learned. The things that are wisdoms, the things that are poisons, and we have to learn how to cope with them and to live with them to achieve bodhicitta. It's poorly explained, but I think I know what I'm talking about.
Okay. No, I think it was very good. Thank you. Michael, what would you say?
Yeah, this is perfectly sensible. All of the poisons, if you glump them all together, they describe a human being, but a human being that resides for the most part in his sort of monkey mind, in the primate part of the brain, where survival is still the essence. Survival of the self has taken the place of physical survival. I mean, the lions and tigers aren't out there anymore, but we still have this urge as humans to be on the defensive, to guard, to grasp and to guard things, and to make up stories that'll help us understand our place in the world and make us see our place in the world as exaggerated. And it's definitely a child mind. And so the challenge is to spend less time in that part of it's not the part of the brain, but less time in that part of our mind, and more time in awareness of the potential goodness in the world and in ourselves, and the space in which we are the world. So it's unfortunate that all of these are describe the human beings, because we have a long road to hoe. We, in order to not be the characteristics that make us ignorant and, sort of butt heads. It this practice, these practices have to be, we have to be vigilant, because this monkey mind, the monkey's not going anywhere. We're going to carry it around for the rest of our life. And when we least expect it, the monkey's going to want to be fed, or want to have sex, or want to kill something, or want to tell a story to itself about how great it is. It's just, it's what we've become. And what we become as humans, it's no wonder that society is in such shit, because as an aggregate we're just ignorant shits, and we're not going to have a peaceful, loving world until we evolve. So that's the challenge, I think, is evolving. And really, there's I remember there's a song David Bowie did. Was it the Changes song or whatever? But he talks about Homo superior.
Talks about what?
Homo superior.
Homo superior?
Homo superior, yes. And after Homo sapien, there's a different class of being that's still embodied and still in the world with all of its challenges, but is in a position to walk through it with more grace and equanimity. So it's this is all, it's very sensible, and this is the Buddha was the smartest dude ever to live, and probably will always be the historical Buddha, because he knew that he had to provide all of these pieces for us to deal with. Like all these little, he's giving us blocks to build things with. He's giving us dice to try to make believe that we have chance and fate, and dominoes to allow us to play the game. And all of this is supposed to, it just helps us realize our relationship with reality, I think. And he gives it all to us. Just the fact that there's a Buddha for each one of these. I mean, who wouldn't want a Buddha for each one of our poisons? That's what I need, right? A Buddha for each one of these pieces of crap that's in me. I mean, who can lose, right? So, yeah, it's amazing.
That's a good word.
It's amazing, and it's quite an opportunity that we have to leave this whole set of nonsense behind us, and to begin to know who we are and our true nature, okay, even if it's a glimpse at a time.
Right. Well, let's move on. Let me ask Tom the same question. What do you think, Tom?
Oh boy. Oh man. Buddhism is very logical. Very logical. The Buddha said, investigate everything I've said, everything I've taught. Investigate for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. Investigate it. See, there's lies, if there's doubts, ask questions. Don't just accept it blindfolded. And The difference is, I mean, just all these obscurations that we talked about, or you talked about today, the afflictions. The Buddha taught exactly how to rid ourselves of those afflictions, obscurations. Once we do that, we find our true nature. You know, until that happens, I mean, we're all human beings. But once that happens, once that we recognize all, then we become a precious human being. That's the key.
Okay. Rebecca, what do you think? Your microphone's not on.
I know. I had to figure out how to unmute myself in both
Oh,
places. Um, I find myself remembering. So my son is 16, and I find myself remembering he was about 3 years old. We went on vacation, and we went to the pool, and he was very, very consumed in the pool with making sure his little toes could touch the bottom of the pool because that meant he was safe. And he would, but there was some current in the swimming pool we were in, and it tended to draw him to where it was deeper. And he would freak out because his toes couldn't touch the bottom of the pool. And then, so we're kind of working with him on this. And then suddenly he realized if I just, I'm just going to be at the surface of the water anyway. If I just let go of this idea that I have to be touching the bottom, then I'm okay. And all of this kind of seems to me to be part of that. There are so many things that we get attached to because we think they're going to keep us safe. My sense of myself, my possessions, my the things I'm passionate about, all become a way to stay safe, and they're all impermanent. And it just seems that all of this is a wonderful system for being able to get to the point where you just say, all I have to do is float on the surface of the water and I'm fine.
Well,
That's how it struck me.
That's a good analogy. That's very good. Does it seem, so basic that that we take it for granted? Going through this exercise of enumerating all these things, or elaborating is the better word. All these very simple things. Do you see the importance of doing that?
Oh, yeah.
And again, like I said, this becomes, the fundamental stuff that when we, for the rest of our lives, when we sit down to meditate, all these different emotions are still going to come up. And how we deal with them is based in these explanations right here, this. So, and then as we do it better and better and better, less things come up, they're less complicated, and they're easier to recognize, and they're easier to cut off. They're easier to recognize the wisdom that saves the day, the glimpse after glimpse of seeing what this is, and then the perfection comes, and this is being on the path.
Oh my God, I'm doing it again. Let me stop.
What do you mean?
I just, the idea that, that after a while, something comes up and you just go, I'm doing it again. All right, I'll stop. As
Right.
opposed to it being a big dramatic deal.
Well, that's right. And eventually you just get to that point where you just cut it off.
Yeah.
And there are different Buddhas whose character, whose picture is that they're holding a particular knife that represents just cutting off those emotions. And so all these different icons, all these different pictures that we have of these different Buddhas are just symbols of these actualizations that we need to do as Buddhas. So this particular one is cutting off the root of cutting off the roots of the poisons. At the same time, she's got a bowl, as gross as this sounds, she's got a bowl that is a skull cup, a cranium, that is filled with blood. And this is some of the things that make people feel uncomfortable because of the dramatics of the culture of Buddhism. But she's got this skull cup of blood and she's drinking it, because what that symbolizes is unqualified enjoyment of all things.
Wow. Ew. Okay.
Just think about that. That even though, we don't get rid of the emotions, we don't get rid of the causes of the emotions. And some of those things are totally repugnant to us, cause great suffering to us. But we recognize them as all part of nature. And we thank them. We have unqualified enjoyment of those things, because it's those things that we're able to show us how to liberate, what it is to liberate. And to recognize this world of samsara, this phenomenal world, as a temporary world, as a temporary part of being a human being. Being a human being is a temporary thing. And that if there's something else, we don't know, but at least not to be attached to this, because that's where the suffering is.
So I'm picking up in what you just said, that it's almost like you can't recognize the good thing without having its darker twin.
Without recognizing the dualism. We need to recognize the dualism. When we recognize and accept the dualism, not that it has to remain, a permanent fixture in our lives, but just say, that's what's holding us back. And that's what I have to cut off. That's what I have to let go of.
Right. But you wouldn't know the positive if you couldn't differentiate it from a negative.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what we have to do. We have to analyze, we have to look at everything in these basic building blocks, like Michael was saying, so that we can let go of it. Otherwise, we get into a situation where we think we've done something, and then we get to the situation, and then here comes this very basic fundamental thing that we haven't dealt with, we don't know how to deal with, and it just pulls us right back. That we're unprepared for.
Well, I think I told you when we talked on the phone, I was driving one day and it just kind of hit me that I felt like there was something missing that would help me deal with some of the things I'm dealing with in my life. And it sure seems like what you presented this evening looks like precisely what I was pondering on that day when I was driving.
Well, very good. Okay. All right. So does anybody else have any comments or things to talk about? All right. Well, then next week we'll continue the conversation and get a little bit more into the results of this. We'll talk about karma and how these are the causes of karma, understanding these poisons as the causes of karma. So we'll look at karma, causes, and result.
Before we go, I have failed to send you a picture of that card.
Oh, no problem.
I can show it to you here.
Yeah, sure.
I have it in my hand.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Can you see this?
Oh, that was for you.
Well, yes, but it is inscribed inside it to you.
Oh, well then let me share it with you.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure it was not something that was particularly meaningful to you that you would like to have back.
Well, it's, things flow right through us.
All right.
So I saw the card, it was on my desk, and I said, oh, this would be a nice thing to give you. And so that's a picture of Buddha Shakyamuni.
And then these are presumably,
Those are the 5 Buddha families. Those are the heads of the 5 Buddha families. So
okay.
Shobhya, Amitabha, Amagogsiddhi, Ratnasambhava, and Varanchana.
Okay.
Did you print this? Do you have this?
I do, and I have it up on my screen right now.
Okay.
So the colors are as they are listed here.
Correct.
Okay.
So you can now match the colors of their bodies together with their names, together with their antidotes, and together with their wisdoms, and with their Buddha consorts, their female consorts.
Excellent.
So we'll talk much more about all these things.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much. It was lovely this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, so now we need to do our dedication. So Michael, if you will, please. If we'll do the dedication prayer on page 21 by Lord Jigden Sumgun. So do page 20 and 21 and 22, please.
By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drinkumpa Ratnashri, who is omniscient Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, ah, hum. Om, ah, hum. May my body, speech, and mind become one with the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha and all enlightened ones.
Okay, thank you all very much. So next week, same time, same station.